We're live in 3, 2, and welcome everybody. It's another episode of the Planetmullins podcast, and today I have an amazing drummer, producer, all around good guy, just also a close personal friend, and I'm his fan as well. This is Mr. Tony Braunagel, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, Tony.
Hey there, Rob. Good to see you, buddy. It's been a while. I haven't laid my eyes on you in person for a while, but you know, I'm glad we get a chance to look at each other today. Thanks for asking.
Well, thanks for squeezing in a little bit of your precious time to come do my podcast, because I know that if anybody is out there through the pandemic times still doing stuff and making it all happen, it would be you.
Well, it's so funny because I know everybody's got a different story about how the shock hit them, you know.
Right.
Stephanie and I were on vacation in Mexico in early March, and when we'd heard about it like the day or after we left to go down to Mexico, and we were on the beach at a friend's place, and we had a great time down there. And then on the 10th of March, or the 12th or whatever, everything kind of went dark, you know, here in the United States, and we went, what do we do? Stay on the beach, because we had, if all the bookings were going to be gone, and our friend owns the place, and figured we could stay here for free as long as we want. Wow. Or we go back to LA, and there was responsibility. So, so let's go back, and we'll drive back down here later or whatever. So we came back and basically just kind of hunkered down here, just trying to figure out the survival part in the first place. But I had a project that I had 90% finished, except 2 days of patching up some vocals with the artist. Bam! I said, get right in here, wear a mask, get over here. I got the studio, write protocols and everything. Just three of us, engineer, me and him, and we sang them. We got him, put him out. He mixed the album. I think he's released it. And then I had another one that I started working on at the tail end of the year, November, December, a little bit demoing, and some of the tracks were cut, and we got most of the other tracks cut before the lockdown. And
okay,
that's finished now. The single's coming out Monday, and the album be out next year. And then I got a deal on another project that I've been working on for almost 4 or 5 years now.
Wow.
And that got a record deal, and they were going to release it in the spring. And then, you know, all business in the music business has been completely slowed down and cramped up.
Right.
And we got a release coming in February for the album, but we released a single in August, and then we're releasing another single in October, and I just finished up the little video production for that.
Wow.
And I'm managing this one person as well. And what else? I lost 6, 7 fat out-of-town festival, international and national weekends, you know, where I would leave on Wednesday and come home Monday, and we would make nice cake and have a lot of fun. And it's okay, you know, it'll come back next year or whenever. And a cruise with Taj Mahal got canceled and are postponed till next year.
Uh-huh.
3 other album projects I probably would be meddling in right now.
Right.
I forgot another one. Was a guy named Phil Colombato. I started with him last fall, and we got all the recording done. And I said, hey, there's a special person that he was after to get him to mix it for us, was available. I said, let's take advantage of him downtime, let him mix it. And that's been mixed and everything. And I'm headed out to Kansas City this Monday. It's my first time to get on an airplane. I'm going to Kansas City. Kansas City, here I come. I hear they got some crazy little women there. I'm sorry, I had to get all those out of the way.
Well, I think, and I'm going to get me some.
That would be the plan.
You know, I might take a train, I might take a plane, but you know, Tony, here's one thing that I noticed reading your bio is that Willie Arnellis, who's a really well-known drummer, I guess he had something to do with your early thing of getting you going on drums. Tell us about that.
You really want to hear that story?
Well, I mean,
it's a great story. I told it many times. I'd be more than happy to tell you.
Okay. I mean, I just saw it on there. I was like, I didn't even know that you guys knew each other.
Well, Willie and I lived on the same street in Houston, Texas, and he had started playing drums a couple of 3 years before me, because he's like 3 years older than I. And I was already interested in drums because my cousin had a drum kit. And between my cousin having a nice little Gretsch kit that he would hardly ever let me play in, and Willie bashing down the street and starting to actually play he was playing out at the age of 15, 16.
Wow.
And I think he even quit high school for like a year or two, like he quit for a year. Of course, he went back.
Right.
But I got the bug, and I started hanging out with him, and we were already friends, but somehow music brought us closer, and we started listening to all the early R&B of that period that I basically was raised on as a drummer. I was raised on rhythm and blues from the 60s, 50s and 60s, really. Okay. Seriously. That's, I mean, there was rock and roll, that's okay. And then the modern jazz that came out, I never really went down the jazz path seriously to make a living playing jazz. I stayed in the R&B thing and played in nightclubs all the time. So anyhow, Willie and I are getting together, and he says to me, he's been talking to me, he says, listen, man, I want to buy that Rogers kit that guy has, but I need to sell my other kit. And it was a Kent, K-E-N-T. Mm-hmm. And it was only one tom, snare, ride cymbal, bass drum. That was it. And a suitcase to put your hardware in. He said, if you buy this kit for $150, I'll give you 7 days to come up with 100. After that, it's 150. So I'm sitting in his kitchen. That's where we spent a lot of time because he was a Mexican, never from Mexico, and his mom and his dad, there was always some good food in the kitchen somehow that we would sneak in. So we would sit in the kitchen with the telephone there and like wait for somebody to pop some food out. Hungry little guys, you know what I mean, that we were. And so he gets a phone call. I'll tell you the whole story if you want. He gets a phone call and he picks up the phone. He goes, yeah, hi. No, I've got a gig tonight already. I can't do it. Yeah. Do I know any other drummers? The guy asked him, he goes, yeah, I know another drummer. Puts his hand over the phone and looks across the table at me sitting there, like with my wide eyes. He goes, hey, you want to do a gig? And I said, I have to ask my mom and dad first, 15. So he goes, okay, we'll Charlie, we'll call you. His name was Charlie. I remember that. He goes, Charlie, we'll call you back in a little bit. All right. Can we call you back? Okay. All right. Fine. He goes, you better go ask your mom and dad. So I hightailed it off down the street. I had a little motor scooter at the time. And I hightailed it off the street down. Oh no, I had already gone to the scooter shop and sold my scooter and walked back 2 miles to his house to give him the $45 that I sold it for.
Oh,
knowing that I only needed 55 over the next 7 days. And I go home, go talk to my mom and dad about it. And hey, mom, dad, I got a gig tonight. I got a gig. What? I said, I got a gig tonight. I can go play a gig. And what do you mean you have a gig? Where is it? It's at a place. Now I'm like, stumbling words. It's a place over. It's at Equipment in Fulton, and my dad goes, son, that's a nightclub. I know that place. Yeah, it's a nightclub, Dad. It was probably called the Hoochie Coochie or something, whatever. It was way too obvious. So my dad goes, no, son, you're too young. 15, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I badgered him. Finally goes, go ask your mom. So I go ask my mom. And my mom says, honey, you're too young. We can't, what can we do? You're too young. It's, no, it's, go back to your dad. I go back to my dad. Finally, my dad said, all right, but this better not become a habit. So he said, but here, let me, but this is the funny part of that piece right there. So he says, okay, but here's the deal. I don't want you taking any funny cigarettes off anybody. And I don't want you talking to any of the women. And I said, Dad, I'm only 15. I don't know what you're talking about. All right. So I go back down. Willie calls the guy, Charlie. Yeah, I got you a drummer. What's his name? Tony Braunagel. Never heard of him. I know he's kind of new, but he knows. He knows all your music. I know he does. Right. I knew all the basic, standard tunes of the time and beats that you had needed to do to play right. Blues and R&B and maybe a little bit of country or whatever, or a Zydeco song or whatever. I knew how to play all that by now.
Right.
And so he says, okay, but you got to come pick the guy up. And so Charlie pulls up into Willie's driveway. Willie's already gone because it's a Friday night. So he's already gone doing his Friday night gig on some nightclub. And the guys pull up in the driveway and he get the big old guy, about mid-20s, gets up and says, "Hey, I'm looking for a guy named Tony." And I said, "Hi, I'm Tony." I'm like 5'7", 15 years old. You know? My voice had probably barely changed, you know. And so we get in the car and they put my stuff in the trunk, and it's like weird vibe. And the bass player was in the front seat, and I couldn't see him, and he didn't introduce me to the bass player. And we get in the back seat, and we're about 2 blocks down the road, and they are really, really curious. He says, "So you been playing anywhere around town?" He goes, I said, "Yeah, I've been playing. I played a couple of sock hops at school, and I played in my cousin's garage all the time." And you know, and he goes, "Are you going to tell me this is your first gig?" And I go, "Yeah, this is my first gig." And he just laughs and he goes, "God damn, Ornelas, he got us, man." You know.
Oh man.
And then the bass player, unbeknownst to me at that point, had a glass eye, and I didn't realize it. So he's in the front seat. Imagine I'm looking at the back of his head. And when I said I've only been playing, this is my first gig, he goes like this with his glass eye. He goes, "No shit," you know, and like gives me this, and I'm like, I'm scared now. We get over to the gig. I set up on stage. I can't walk around, smoke cigarettes and beer and drink beer like these other guys are walking around talking to women, doing exactly what my dad told me not to do, you know? So I just sit there in the corner and wait with my drumsticks in my hand, my snare drum, my tom-tom, my right cymbal, my bass drum, and I'm sitting on the suitcase. That's my stool, all right, ready to go. At the last minute, the saxophone player, whose name was Armando, pops up on the stage, and Charlie says, "Hey, Armando." You know, I mean, it's the last minute before we had to play. Pulls the sax out. It's like downbeat. And he goes, "Armando, this is our new drummer for the night. His name is Tony." Armando didn't look at me weird. All the other guys are looking at me. Oh my God, what's going to happen? You know, they think shit's going to fall apart, you know. And Armando didn't think for a second. He just looked at me and goes, "Hey man, nice to meet you." He goes, "Nighttime is the right time in D." We started playing. And I just like took off. It's like jumping off a cliff. Like,
wow.
You got to fly now, bud. You know, the deep end. And that was my first gig. And Ornelas sold me that drum kit for $100. I got the money before the next Saturday. I got it for $100.
Wow, man, that's incredible because, you know, I started playing when I was really young too. I was at a big band called the Barons from Ontario, California. And I was a drummer first before piano, and I tried out. And I got the young guy, you know, award thing that band had, and we started touring all over Southern California when I was 12. And wow. it was like 40-year-old guys.
Wow.
You know? And they had a main drummer, and then they had me. So, you know, I'm riding on this frickin' school bus that they had bought and painted, you know, all this Hispanic stuff on it, because it was a Hispanic big band, but we were doing Count Basie and Thad Jones and Mel Lewis and Neil Hefti charts. And I'm on that bus with my math homework, smelling these weird smelling cigarettes, you know, not having any idea what's going on. And the guys are talking and everything. So, you know, you and I share the young guy thing coming in, and it was just so fun because I didn't even know enough to be scared by these guys. They just looked at me like, well, you know, the leader of the band, Melky Holtman, he says, "Take care of this kid, Robert Mullins. Make sure nothing bad happens to him." And we were going to Air Force bases and staying there overnight and stuff. And I'd be calling home to my parents, "Oh, I'm fine. I'm in a barracks out in, you know, Oceanside, and everything's fine. No, I had milk. I drank a glass of milk. And yeah, I had a hamburger. I'll be back." You know, it was kind of cool. But Tony, you just from there, you went on to all this stuff. And I'm just going to kind of throw darts at the wall right here because, you know, I knew that you had played with Taj Mahal, and I knew about Robert Cray, and I knew about Bonnie Raitt. And, you know, we can talk about any of those things, but what stood out when I was going through this massive list of your credits is that you wrote a song for Johnny Cash?
Johnny Nash.
Oh, Johnny Nash. Okay, because I thought it was Johnny Cash.
No. Well, that, I would have liked to have written a song for Johnny Cash, but no, Johnny Nash was pretty proud distinction as well, I must say.
Oh, absolutely. Well, did you get into the singing part of drums and singing and piano and guitar in order to be able to become a composer as well as being a drummer?
Well, I don't, my dad taught me 3 chords on the guitar, and that's about all I got. And later on, I figured out how to play triads on the piano, and then, oops, there's a 9th. Okay, that sounds cool. There's jazz right there. Oops, that's gospel with that note there, that kind of thing.
Right.
That's about all I could get out of playing a guitar and piano. And still, I always keep a guitar near, even just a little parlor guitar like this.
Oh, wow.
So, and when I get an idea, I pluck it out, and then I, go from there. But that song that I wrote for Johnny Nash, I wrote on a guitar with 3 simple chords. It was just a kind of a gospel-y spiritual ballad, and he liked it and took the heft of publishing and recorded it.
Wow. Well, yeah, I mean, that's a whole thing there too. But I mean, if I go down the list of these names, like, how did you meet Eric Burdon? Because Eric Burdon was with the Animals. And then he used to come to this club that I played at in the 80s called the Nucleus Nuance.
Yeah, I knew that place. Yeah,
yeah, you remember the Nuke? And it was at La Brea and like Melrose.
Yeah.
And, it was this wacky place where Eric Burdon was friends with the owner. And then also Herbie Hancock, that was like his secret place to hang and stuff.
Yes.
But, when I heard Eric Burdon and the Animals first come on the radio when I was little, I was like, holy crap, this music's great. And then how did you meet him?
When I moved here in 1979, right along November of 79, there was a keyboard player friend of mine that lived here. His name was Louis Cabaza. I don't know if you remember him. He played with a lot of bands. He moved back to Texas. He was originally from Texas. And we were friends in Texas. And he was always saying, get your butt out here. You're high enough caliber. I said, you think I can work in LA, man? Mind you, by then I'd already lived in New York for a bit and struggled there, but knew what it takes to get up to that level. And I lived in London for 5 years, and I was I started in the studio going way back. I got really interested in recording way back. Uh-huh. So Louis knew I was coming out, and I wasn't here more than a few months, I think, before he said, hey man, we're going to do some demos with this guitar player I know up at this guy's home studio up in Laurel Canyon, up at the top there. And it's for a guy named, Eric Burdon, the Animals. I said, well, sure. I think Snuffy Walden was on that as well. I mean, Louis got me some work right away when I got here.
Cool.
And literally the first day I got here, I had started rehearsing for a gig. But we did a recording with Eric Burdon, and that kind of came eventually as an unofficial, but then later official release. And he needed a band to tour around. We toured around the state. We toured around California, did some dates. And then we branched out a little bit more on the road, and not much. We weren't really tearing it up. And then they wanted to go to Europe and do this movie. Oh, we went to Australia and did a 6-week tour. Had a ball. They wanted us to go to Europe, to Berlin, and do this movie. I got to be there for about 10 days, worked in a movie.
Wow.
While we cut a whole bunch of different scenes, staying at the hotel. They take good care of us and everything. Had a ball in Berlin for 10 days. You can have fun in Berlin. And I actually had a really small acting part, and they asked me and Snuffy one day, said, we need a musician scene with you and Eric. So we think you two guys should be, I guess my personality sticks out, like I could act or something. And so, which I did. And I was on a TV show for 8 years. So,
wow.
We did that, and then we got to be friends, and then something went weird with management and everything, and money was starting to get funny. And I remember grabbing my money and going, okay, and getting on the plane and going home. And then the next phone call, I went, I'm not sure I can make that. The other guys were still waiting to get paid, and they're going, how did you get your money? I said, well, I made a deal. I said, this is business, pay me. And they paid me cash at the end of the tour.
Wow.
But we didn't talk to each other again for about 17 or 18 years.
Wow.
And he called me one day in the early 2000s, 2002, 2003, 2001, something like that. And we just gotten a Grammy for the Taj Mahal record that I produced, the live record. And right at with months after that, he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I've branched out into not trying, to become a producer. I've made a few small records, and then I have one that just won a Grammy, and so I'm hoping that helps me thrust my producing career forward." And he said, "Well, I'm trying to make a record, and I just can't get these guys." And da. So I talked him into letting me cut 3 or 4 songs of his with my guys, and he loved it. And then called back a couple of weeks later, "Let's do 3 more." Boom. Next thing you know, we got a whole album. So I then became his producer for 3 albums in a row.
Wow.
And our friendship was great way back when we were working together back in the early 70s.
Mm-hmm.
But the early 80s. But it got even stronger and stronger and stronger through these years of producing since 2003. And he called me the other day. He's just moved to Greece. He moved out of here. And he married a Greek woman 12 years ago. So,
wow.
Something like that. But we got to be really close. And we still are. And talk about stories. When you drive sometime and you want to either listen to music or a story tape or something or books on tape or whatever,
All right. Podcast.
I would leave San Francisco sometimes be up there for a weekend working or be up there doing something, a session or whatever. I'm driving home. It's Sunday afternoon. It's 1:00. I get in a car. I don't really want to listen to music because I've been making music. And I go, what else can I do? Call Eric. And I would call Eric. And for an hour and a half or 2 hours solid while I'm driving, I would hear stories. It was amazing. It's still like that. And he and I could sit on the phone probably all day and talk, or not on the phone, in a room, the two of us,
Right.
Great guy. I love him. I love him to death. His stories are incredible. And, you got to realize he was the 5th Beatle,
Oh,
so,
really? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, he was like what they called the 5th Beatle. He was so tight with them. Plus, that the Eric Burdon and the Animals were bigger than the Rolling Stones. So he was more seminal to that whole movement, him and the Animals, than a lot of other people give them credit for. British rock scene, British blues scene, whatever.
Yeah, it's just interesting how, you think about blues, because I'm not at all as familiar with blues as you are, obviously, but I always thought the origin of blues was in the southern United States. And then how did it become a British thing?
Well, the Brits were buying up the records. There's a guy named Eamon Corner and another guy over in London, and they got these records, these chess records and early Brunswick records and all of those labels that started. Brunswick was originally a furniture company, and they made records in the back.
Oh, wow.
Chess was in Chicago, and as the diaspora of African Americans moving to industrialized cities like Chicago and Detroit and in Indianapolis and any of the big cities up north, and basically you look at the river coming from Mississippi River, and you go from the Delta there at Arkansas, Mississippi, you go from there and New Orleans, you go straight up the river, and you'll see all these, how it branches out, and all of these these African American artists, that were from that era and that style of music as slaves, as they were slaves, and that was the music that they played.
Wow.
And that's what they brought with them from Africa. So a lot of that music, all of that music, basically has an African origin to it. From different areas of Africa, there are different tribal things that affected the blues certain ways. When that got up to the major cities, those records that were made, these English guys brought these records over. We could sit here and I could have 4 people that really know what they're talking about as well as my stories, and we could all have a little bit different nuance to this, but I'm kind of, boiling it down.
Right.
And they got stuck into that music then, and that's how you have Peter Green and Cream and all the bands that started out with playing blues over there, and Jimi Hendrix was found over there when he was a rhythm guitar player with Little Richard and a lot of different R&B acts, and people don't know he played on a lot of R&B hits that he didn't know of, that you don't know of, before he ever became the Jimi Hendrix.
Wow, I didn't know that. Did you know him?
No, I didn't. I never knew him, but a lady friend of mine that dated him, she's the one that actually, Linda Porter, her name is Linda Porter. Linda, so that's her married name. She's married to John Porter, and a producer friend of mine, very, very good friend of mine, dear friend of mine. Linda, I'm going to remember her real last name in a second. Yeah, she took Jimi Hendrix to Chaz Chandler, who was the bass player in The Animals, and was a managerial type of guy, and entrepreneurial and managerial. And he took Jimmy and went, listen, you got to hear this guy, you know, and it blew up from there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause you know, it's amazing how some guys that are, you know, just in the background, and then all of a sudden there's those stories. Like I watched that documentary recently that came out about Elton John. You know,
I haven't seen that. I'd like to watch it.
Yeah, it's either an Amazon or a Netflix or something, but it's just really interesting how, you know, it's just the evolution of everything, because like you and I have both done, we put ourselves in the situation for something to happen. I mean, I've done a lot of interviews and stuff too, and people are always saying, what's your advice for young people? And before the virus, I could always say this for decades, which is get out of your house, leave your basement, go to a club, go meet people. Don't sit in your house and wait for Capitol Records to call, because that's not how it's going to happen. But
yeah, no, I mean, when I first moved here, people said, man, you go out a lot. And I go, yeah, because I want people to know that I am available and that I'm here, and I want them to see my face. And I go, you know, it wasn't like I was going out in bars to get drunk and hang out or whatever.
Right.
Just to do that. Of course, there was a certain amount of that because you're going to go out and hear music and have fun. But I'm going out to meet guys. Boom, meet guys. Next thing you know, they say, we need a drummer for so-and-so. And I've given somebody my card, and I met that guy 2 weeks earlier. Hey, we got a gig next Tuesday night. Our guy can't make it. Can you do it? Boom, you get in.
Right.
You know? We got a session. Can you play in the studio? I've been playing in the studio since I was, at that point, you know, 18, 19 years old. Yeah, and so that's all those years of, you know, knowing how to mic it up and plug it in and make it sound right in the studio, how to tune it, how to hit it, you know. And so all of those things that you learn, they're no good if you don't get out there and become part of the circuitry that's out there doing it. And I'm a gregarious guy, and I'm okay in a room full of strangers.
Right.
I'm not intimidated. I can sit in the middle of a bunch of strangers and find something to talk about, as long as they're not complete creeps or whatever, you know. But, you know, the thing is, you know, this is true, because what you said earlier about being on the bus with those grown-ups, about me being thrown in the deep end with the nightclubs, because I continued doing that. And that's what brought me up, were those couple of guys, a bass player and then a horn player that grabbed me and went, come on, you know, you're going to learn this. Come on, you know,
right.
Or, shut up, sit down, play it this way. Don't play all that crap. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know, they did that. And because we got that kind of training from grown-ups, we were assertive. You were very assertive, and I'm very assertive, not in an obnoxious way. Just we're both fun, friendly, gregarious guys, and people want to play with us because we have that openness to our personality that we learned really young, so we didn't go through any kind of weirdness, you know.
Yeah, I just think it's so funny, because now that we're in this whole you know, new world of digital everything and Facebook and Instagram and all that, some of the most entertaining pictures that I've seen in the past couple of years is you, when you get, you know, in these gregarious studio moments, and I've been in a few of these little pictures with you too, and you just go, okay, everybody, make the weirdest face you possibly can. 2, 1, shoot. And then there's this thing that could be like on the haunted house ride at Disneyland, because everybody's just mooning, you know. Right, but it's
I started out doing that in Europe. I don't know what I know what made me do it. My first time it happened, I had a bicycle when I was on road with Robert Cray. I had a bicycle in the States with my gear, with that set of gear, and then our European gear. I had a bicycle that I bought, sent over there, that I rode, and I just got off of the bike 30 minutes before we did this.
Wow.
And I would ride all over these towns, and I think the first time I did it was in Frankfurt. And I'd ridden around. There was this big square with this big, beautiful old German architectural.
It's beautiful. Building. I know Frankfurt. It's beautiful.
Yeah, right. And so you're in one of those squares, and you go, all right, I'm gonna take a picture of the building. You know, that's boring. I'll put my face in it, boring. And I took a picture of one, and I saw some guy standing behind me about 30 yards between me and the building, standing there looking at me like this, suspiciously. So I went, all right, I'll take another one. So I took another one with my face like this guy's looking at me like he's following me. And I call it my Euro Spy series. And I started making that. I've got hundreds of those selfies. And people say, you need to put out a book with those selfies. They're goofy. It's kind of like, you know, Leland Sklar's selfies.
Yeah, right.
In the world, so.
Yeah, that's kind of what came to mind, although I'll have to see if I have to edit that out or not for the for eventually when I sell my podcast to Spotify for 80 million, like Joe Rogan did a month ago.
Oh, really?
Or 2 months ago. But Tony, when you make the switch from drummer to producer, was that just a natural thing? Because those are really different skill sets, right?
Well, here's the way I pose it. I say, I had this feeling that I wanted to produce, kind of an itch. I'm going, well, I think I can organize. I think I can direct. I think I know how sounds are supposed to happen in the studio. I know that process, and I think I can do this. I want to do this. And I kept putting it out there, and I would go up to friends of mine that were producers and famous engineers and go, hey, I just letting you know, I'm thinking about starting producing, and you know, if you got any tips for me, like, and they all go, yeah, right, you're going to produce, right, you know. And I'm like, you know, I do remember, and it was embarrassing, you know, to go up to some of them, but I went, I still have to say it, and I have to tell myself that I'm going to. And I took some early opportunities to try to figure it out. And it was very awkward. And one of them turned out to be a really great piece of music. And the other one was someone who, a female vocalist that I just had it out with because she was being very difficult. And I didn't realize, because I didn't have those types of empowerment skills yet. And so I worked through it it was kind of growing pains in the beginning, but then when I made a couple of things happen, and guys would actually talk to me and they'd say, you know what, just follow your gut. You've been playing music for a long time. You go way back. You've got a lot of music in you. Follow your instincts that makes the music sound good when you're playing it. Use those same instincts when you're producing.
Oh.
And I went, okay, all right. So I did. And it started getting a little bit better for me. And then I started to realize that I didn't have to disagree. It's a way of disagreeing with somebody and finding a way around it. You know, I didn't have that skill right in the beginning. And I realized later that I did. And now I can get along with somebody, even if we're like this about an idea. And at a certain point, you have to have, what's the word? You have to have like a truth to it that you have to find. Oh, what's the truth we're trying to find here? And then when you find that truth to that issue about whether it's a vocal, the right key, the wrong lyric, tempo, whatever it might be that person's not happy with, that you're trying to convince them that is the good idea, then you have to find some kind of truth in that works, and you come together, and then everybody's really happy. And it doesn't have to ever be I told you so, because you shouldn't. Some guys are. You shouldn't be egotistical about that. Oh, see, I told you, I beat you. You know, you should always go, we made the best thing happen that we could make.
Right.
And that's like taking a room full of great musicians, which you know as well as a producer, as a writer, as a composer, you know, as a director that you are, all of those things. When you get in a room full of really smart, really good guys, you don't have to say a lot.
Well, you know, it was funny for me when I was producing this new artist, a new age composer named Janice Lacey in 2015 and 2016. And, you know, she had never really been into the studio before. And I had already recorded the demos, and I had planned out what it was going to be. And we had, you know, come to the terms of the contract and this and that. And I got over to Carmen Grillo's, and he says, okay, cool, man. So you got a new age album. All right. So who's going to play on the session? I said, I got Larry Antonino, who's not known for being new age in the least bit.
Right.
And I got Tony Braunagel, the baddest blues drummer ever, who's not known for being new age the least bit. And it didn't matter to me because I had already worked with you guys in enough context that I knew that you would have the same vision for the music that I did once you heard the piano part and like the dummy drum tracks and everything, because if you're going to be a good producer, you have to be thinking of the song and how are you going to best render that song with whatever you're going to play on that. It's not about, last week I was playing a tour with Taj Mahal, so I'm going to come in and Taj Mahal the heck out of this new age music. No, it's not like that, but it takes a certain amount of maturity. And by now you've won so many Grammys and done so much stuff. I mean, what is it that after all these years of doing it that keeps you excited about continuing? Because most guys, I mean, I'm looking at this Wikipedia discography, it's making me need a nap. And, B.B. King is on here and Coco Montoya and Belushi, Aykroyd. Did you play in the Blues Brothers?
Yeah, I'm still in a band called the Sacred Hearts that backs up the Blues Brothers. And I co-produced a record on them. Geez, it's been 15 years now. And it came out. They changed the name from Blues Brothers to something else foolishly because they thought somebody was going to ask them for a large percentage of the profit or whatever. And so it was not a smart idea, but the record would have done extremely well in Europe at that period had it been released as the Blues Brothers. So they're trying to get me to reissue it and take it down digitally and then put it back up as the Blues Brothers. And I'm waiting for them to say pull the plug, and I'll pull it all together. There's something that dawns on me that you as well go through is and this is how you keep. This is one of the things that happens. When you started playing, and it relates to you saying, blues drummer, playing on a new age thing, right? Yeah. You, as a kid, when I got interested in the studio, I just wanted to be doing all the sessions I could. I enjoyed recording, and I would work at this one studio. I would go cut a country album, a whole album in 3 hours with a bunch of guys with, 8 mics in the room in 3 tracks or 4 tracks. And then I would go to a 16-track or 24-track studio, and I'd play with a gospel choir, and I'd be playing drums in front. And then the next day I'd be playing with a singer-songwriter, something really cute and sweet. And the next day there'd be a rock and roll thing. So I learned to play on all of this stuff. So I'm adaptable and it's fun. I'm very adaptable to many different things. And it's so funny as you get tagged as a blues drummer by the gigs that you do all these years. But a lot of people didn't know that I could play all those other styles, Right. And I was fresh here as a rock drummer from England. When I lived over there for 5 years, I was in a band.
Oh, right. Well, yeah.
So when I got here, it was kind of like, oh, he's a rocker, And I got the Rickie Lee Jones gig, and that ain't a rock gig. And I got that gig in '82. You know what I mean? It's like I went and auditioned for it, and I listened to the music, and I went, this is the way this music's supposed to be played. I know it's supposed to be played. And I got the gig, and it was a funny situation how I got the gig, But there's another story, But I think these sensibilities are there because you like music and you want to play music. And once music gets in your head, a song, a melody or whatever starts to get it, you're not looking at the notes and just reading the notes anymore. You know? And that's the key to being a drummer that gets hired is a guy that plays the songs. Right. And I'm a song drummer. I play your song, whatever that is.
Right. Well, I remember, being in different sessions with you and you just laying down this pocket and not even really playing any fills, but just getting that meat and potatoes of kick, snare, hi-hat, kick, snare, ride cymbal, and just pulling all of those elements together because it just kind of comes down to the vibe and the feel that's everything's got to be built on, like the drums and the bass. That's the meat and potatoes. But I want to go back just briefly, just a little bit too, because I can see why people would think you would only be able to play the blues when you got a freaking Grammy playing with Bonnie Raitt, and then you get more with Robert Cray, then you're playing with Taj. Well, of course they're going to think that's your thing.
Well, I started playing blues when I was a kid. I started playing that, as I said in the beginning of this interview, I started playing 50s and 60s R&B and Jimmy Reed blues and Lightnin Hopkins and Etta James and Bobby Bland and Ray Charles and all that. I started playing all that stuff. That's how I made my hands express the drums, and that's how I started playing. And I still to this day play that. I'll sit down and play a Sanctified Bobby Bland song, doing my best to emulate John Jabo Starks as much as I can, or I'll play a fat pocket like Al Jackson Jr. as much as I am capable of doing it. And
right.
And I feel, even with my 50 plus years of playing, I'm still learning and I'm still working on that.
Well, the idea of emulating other people's grooves in certain situations, I don't think that's a bad thing to do, because I have people come in and say, all right, play this like Herbie. I had a session last year where this bass player contacted me, and he had some sort of a urban-y, Latin-y kind of jazz thing, but it was almost English with some EDM kind of vibe to it. So I said, okay, cool, man. What do you want me to do? Because he was going to hire me as the soloist, mostly acoustic piano. I get called for a lot of acoustic piano solos. So, okay. So he sends me this message, and it says, well, during the first part, I really want it to be kind of like, McCoy Tyner-ish, but not too heavy. And then on the bridge, can you give me some of that Chick Corea Phrygian stuff, but stay out of the way of the trumpet player? And then towards the like late part and the repeat of the chorus, it really needs to sound like Herbie. So I'm thinking to myself, dude, I'm thinking, how am I going to respond to this guy? Because I'd never worked with him before, and I'm kind of thinking, I want to tell him to go pound sand in a way that at the same time, so I wrote him back and I said, I'll tell you what, I took all that under advisement, but I'm sending you a thing that I think sounds like Rob Mullins. And you let me know if this is going to be acceptable. And he he listens to the MP3, he writes me back and he says, that melody line that you played in there is perfect. Do you want to be a co-writer on this tune? So I managed to navigate my way around that thing. But, it's not a bad idea to study at least, all of the people that are happening in that genre. I spent a lot of time pulling Herbie's Rhodes voicings apart and studying Chick's progressions. I had a really interesting guest that on the podcast that I shot earlier today. It was Lyle Mays's niece.
Oh, wow.
And I had heard she's got an album up, she submitted it in jazz vocals for the Grammys this year, but she was really late to the party telling anyone. I didn't find out about her until Sunday. And it's interesting how these threads, like I heard this music and I'm going, it all sounds so familiar, and it's based on these certain foundations. And then she sang this one thing and I was like, only Lyle Mays has ever played that melody line like that. Wow. And then when we started talking, she says, I'm Lyle's niece. And I just went, wow, how all the threads come together, because they do. And how musical and producer brains work, is you have all this soup of all this stuff that you've done, and then you bring that into the next project each time, right?
Yeah, it's you're spot on. I mean, when I would teach, because I would do private lessons occasionally, and I tend to only take people who already play, who are asking me to show them how I make my grooves happen, and how I play a pocket, how I execute what I do, as opposed to a lot of chops. If you want a lot of chops, we'll find you another guy. I know several other drummers that can take you into the stratosphere with chops. That's not going to be me. I'm not going to teach you to play a lot, but I'm going to get you a pocket before you get out of here. And I would show them that, but I would take them and show them tapes of drummers playing, the videotapes that I had.
Oh.
They sit and watch, so you have to pay attention to where the backbeat goes with the vocal melody and the pace of it, and the clave and all of that, how it goes together, and how all those things feel, and how that drummer makes that thing breathe. And I always say you have to authenticate before you can do and make your own style out of it. So a guy asked me to play that at Al Jackson Jr. groove. I go, you're going to study Al Jackson Jr. and I'm going to help you study, and we're going to talk about him, how he does this. Boom. And then the guy, I can see that the guy's getting it, and his reflexology of his, downbeat, backbeat, and everything. And I go, right there, stay right there. Don't do anything else.
Right.
You know, 10 minutes right there. Keep lifting those weights, you know. And then they get it and it gets in their, you know, and that, but I always say authentication is one of the best ways that you can do if you're teaching somebody something. So that's exactly what you're saying when that guy asked you to play all those styles. All the authentication that's in your brain with all the things he said, all those little synapses of Herbie Hancock and everything else, they just came right out of you.
Right.
Because you did all that, you know? It's
yeah,
amazing.
I mean, it's a wonderful community. It's a wonderful vocabulary that we share with music of all of the different genres and the things that we're all doing. I just, you know, one of the best things about doing my podcast, and thank you so much for coming on, by the way.
You're welcome.
In the last couple, I guess I've been doing it about 2 months now, is that I just learned all of this stuff about people that I thought I knew them really well. You know?
Right.
I got these things like that Joel Taylor story of breaking his collarbone,
That's amazing.
you know, four-wheeling in Aruba, and then trying to play the gig with a broken collarbone, and I mean, all that kind of stuff. So that brings me to a favorite thing that I like to ask people too, which is, do you have an example of like the very best live gig or concert, and maybe the very worst, or the very best session, or the very worst? Does anything come to mind there? I mean, I know you got a lot of experience at this stuff.
Oh, I've had some amazing gigs in so many ways. I guess I've had so many great moments of being on stage with really excellent musicians and excellent artists with great talents and voices and songs and everything over the years. And, you know, Bonnie Raitt, fun gigs with Bette Midler, you know, but with the show vibe and everything.
Wow.
Magical music gigs of interplay with musicians, with Rickie Lee Jones. Both those bands that we had on those 2 tours were just killer. They're, you know, great. Reggie McBride was playing bass and Mike Ruff was playing the keyboards, and we had all these great horn players, and Rickie would allow the music to go places. She would go, all right, guys, you know, because it's like, you know, we're like a bunch of horses at the, you know, waiting to take off, and
Right.
she would allow all that as long as within the realm of who her music was, and you respected it when she spoke up or when she started to sing. It was all about her. You know? So we had some great magical moments. I had a lot of great fun times on stage with the Bette gig, which was nothing like I'd ever done before, a show gig, but she was a pleasure to work with. And it was great entertainment every night. And the musicians, because she treated the musicians so well, every night you gave 100% to make her sound and look good. And we came off, that's the reward. You come off a stage, 25,000 people out there just had the time of their life. And then with Bonnie, it got back into my roots of my playing a little bit more, because of it was more blues oriented and R&B oriented and a little bit of rock and roll. And we had some fabulous times playing together for so many years. And I don't know which one sticks out the best, but there's some on video. On I think we took a van from Mammoth to San Francisco to Oakland, and barely made it on time to play a show for the earthquake thing. You know what I mean? We had to push the van in the snow up the hill and everything. You know, I could be here for days if I could remember everything. And playing in front of 450,000 people with the Blues Brothers, you know, on a Rolling Stones and at the SARS benefit and Toronto. And I don't know. I would be here for days trying to remember so many great situations and that I was lucky to play on. And bad sessions, I don't know. You know, I think. Oh, okay. The one that I think was the worst was and I'll be careful about what I say as well, because I know you're editing.
Okay.
I was on a session at Wally Hyder's, and it was a local artist from the Southland here, and I think he was Native American. And the engineer was a very famous English engineer who's not with us any longer, but was notorious in the studio for, you know, while he was working. And it was an afternoon session. And now me and the bass player and the guitar player, and I can't remember who was playing keyboards, we were all friends. And hey, at night, we like to do the things that musicians did at night, drinking and other things as well, right? You know, but we didn't do it, and we never did it in the studio.
Right,
Here we were with Wally Hyder, and the artist and And that engineer producer, we're in there just doing it up, man, and running to the bathroom and running back out to the board and drinking up. And there was Jack Daniels at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And they got so out of it. And I said to Stuffy, I said, I think this, yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Stuffy. I said, if they just offered us some, maybe we'd be okay. We'd get into the spirit things, but they never did. So we're like looking at each other, and these guys are so loaded, they couldn't get it together, and we're in a high-priced studio. I just finally said, hey, I can't do this. And the bass player, I know who it was well. I won't mention his name. I think it was Kevin McCormick, I think. And I just picked up my drums. I didn't have cartridge then. I picked up my drums from my car and walked out. I didn't say a word. And they didn't say a word to me. And no one called and said, what'd you do? Where'd you go? You know what I mean? It's like, what? We walked out of a session. It's the only time I've ever done that. And I've had times in sessions where, like, you know, somebody's trying to get you to play something. It gets to the point to where you've compromised all you can, and you don't want to get angry because you know, you just say, look, I think at this point you need to get somebody else to do this.
Right.
And I've done that. And there's a guy that was a producer. He played guitar in a famous band as well, and became a producer. And he hired me and another famous bass player friend of mine here in town who's done a lot of sessions. We were on the session for this guy. He's producing this boyfriend and girlfriend singer-songwriter thing. And he wanted us to play their songs a certain way. The producer did, which is fine. Got you, man. But they didn't want it anything like that. They didn't want anything like the sounds that we had. They wanted they were going for a lo-fi, cool, hipster kind of thing. And we were playing it out. And to this day, when I see this guy, I just saw him about 6 months ago. I see him every 3 or 4 years. And I saw him at somebody's wake through about six months ago. He's like, I'll never forget that session, man. You know, they just wouldn't play what I said, dude, you're the producer. You didn't take care of what you're supposed to do. That's your job. And now where we are 10, 15 years later, you're still giving me hell about this? Go away. You know?
I know, man. The thing that's funny is all the years working at Carmen Grillo's and seeing you and, you know, a lot of the just greatest musicians of all the recording industry come through. As Carmen he taught me years ago, he says, you know, an important thing, man, when stuff starts to go left, just be sure that they are pointing their gun at somebody besides you.
It's like the two guys in the jungle, you know, and one of them says, there's a bear coming. Well, you know, you got to. I don't have to outrun the bear. I only have to outrun you.
Oh man. Well, Tony, this has been so great. I'm going to tell one quick bad studio story that I've already told once, so I'm going to make it really quick, but I think you'll think it's funny. So I get this call from a guy who is my piano student, and he's in the advertising business, and he says, hey, the company that I work for wants me to do a 3-song thing, and it might end up in a TV commercial, and it's going to be, you know, Frank Sinatra style classics like Fly Me to the Moon. Okay, great, man. All right, so here's how it works. I'll do some arrangements, and then we'll rehearse. I'll come in with a trio, piano, bass, drums, and then you can do, a little reference vocal, and then we'll have you sing the real vocal, and then I'll mix it, and we'll be great. So Carmen, you know, and I love it too, because he's so good at getting sounds. Like, he got great drum sound that day. I don't remember who the cats were. I had somebody on upright, and but it was a trio. So we record the whole thing and we send it off to the guy. And then the guy calls me up just screaming after he gets it. And he's really, really, really mad. And Carmen, I wasn't at the studio, but Carmen always does a great job. And I produce and I try and always do a great job. So I'm thinking, what could this guy be upset about? Grumble, 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 curse, curse, curse. You effing this, you effing. I was like, oh no, man. So I said, well, look, stay calm. Let me call the studio, see what's going on. So what the guy's complaint is that we had chopped up all of his vocals when editing program, and we had ruined his version of Fly Me to the Moon. So I call Carmen, I say, Mayday, Mayday, because this is one of those guys that will go on Facebook and it'll be international reputation damage because he's that angry. He's going to say, Carmen Grillo is the worst engineer in the world. Rob Mullins can't produce. So I emergency run over to the studio to Carmen's. Carmen, pull me up, solo that track to Fly Me to the Moon. Okay, here you go. He hits play. Fly me to the moon and let me play among the star. Let me see what life is like on Jupiter and Mars. And I'm going, what happened here, Carm? And he goes, we just didn't notice it, but the guy doesn't have the S.
No, the consonant, yeah.
He doesn't have the S at the end of any of these words. It's supposed to be fly me to the moon. We play among the stars with an S. So then it's my duty. I have to call the guy back and say, bro. So luckily, you know, Carmen was a good sport about it, and we were able to just take S's from all different places.
Yeah.
And we had to paste all of these syllables on there, and it was a giant pain in the ass.
Very well done. Very well done. That's
so
good.
Tony, if somebody wants to get a hold of you to hire you to produce or play on their stuff, how would they do that?
Well, I mean, should I get out my phone number, I guess?
Well, your email or social media.
My email, yeah, definitely. You can email me at tonybraunagel@mac.com, which is TONY.
Right.
BRAUNAGEL.
Okay.
At mac.com.
Beautiful.
And email me or hit me up on Facebook Messenger. I don't spend a lot of time on that stuff. I do. There's a certain amount we have to do on social media. I do that, but I'm not like this all day long because I got too many other things going on. I mean, I'm getting texts right now to work with this artist that I'm producing. I'm producing Danielle Nicole in Kansas City this next week, and I'm flying on Monday, and we're still working on songs. And so she's the girl who got the Grammy nomination 2 years ago. And so I'm thrilled and honored to be asked back. And I think we've got a really great approach to this. This time we don't have a label. And so we don't have anyone telling us, can you make it radio marketable, blah, blah, blah. Can you make it can we get some singles out of this? We don't have anybody saying that to us. And I love it because we both just proclaimed the other day that it's just such a great spirit that we don't have to listen to that or think about that. We're going to make the best music that we know we can, and we're going to make the best songs happen that we know we can with the amount of time that we have. It's not like you've got 8 days to record and finish 12 songs, you know.
I know.
They must be wonderful, and they must be good on the radio. And, you know, we know what we're doing. She knows what she's doing. She's an amazing artist, incredible voice. We're going to make a great record, but we're just going to make a great record because we can and we know how to make music, and we're really good together. And she's got some great young players, and I'm going to have a ball, man. I'm looking forward to it.
That's so great, man. Well, it's weird because the label people can have the vibration of it. Like if they're in the room in the studio, the music doesn't turn out right.
You know, here's the way I put it. I always put it like this. You want me to sound like something that you want me to sound like because you think because that's hot on the radio right now, I should be sounding like this right now at this moment that's out on the radio that you think is really good and hip and it's going to sell a lot of records. Okay, guess what? That concept started at least 2 years ago with a conversation, then an artist and a producer, then a label, then a manager, then they wrote the song, then they did it, then they got in the studio and finished it and mixed it and mastered it, and then you took 3 or 4 months before you even released it. So you want me to go back and make something that was conceived back 2 years ago? Because that's what you think it should be? That's the way I go, no. Why don't we do what we do right now with what we know we have already in the facilities that we have?
It's a matter of trust.
And make that. That's how music happened. Yeah. People didn't go back and tell those artists back in the 30s and 40s and 50s and the 60s and all that music and all that jazz and all that blues and everything. They didn't go tell those guys, now you got to go out there and get this certain type of audience. You know, if you were a big band and you were a dance big band, yeah, you had to do songs that people danced to. But, you know, I am enough of a suit when I say that in the business. Right. Just enough of a suit to know, to be careful about what I say business-wise. But I'm definitely much, much more of just an artist, how I approach that I'm not going to let it bother me or dictate exactly how I have to do it. So I remember last year, the year before,
I got approached by a young blues guitar player, and I had never produced like a full-on blues album that was going to be released as blues or contemporary blues. And the first person that I called was you.
That kid was great, man. He was really, really good. He should make another one.
Yeah, well, you know, he never released the first one.
Oh.
So, you know, that's a whole rabbit hole we'll go down off camera sometime. But I just wanted to thank you because the guidelines that you gave me for like, okay, well, here's generally how much I charge to do a blues record. Here's where the money goes. Here's how I organize it. Here's some good players. Here's some good studios. If you need anything, Rob, hit me up during it, you know, whatever. And it was just so nice of you to just jump in and kind of mentor me into the blues world that way, because I've always been able to play the blues. I mean,
no, you're a brilliant musician. That's not the thing. It's just interpretation. You know, that's thing. I really appreciate you calling me to do that. And I guess, you know, if I thump my or ring my own bell here for a second, that's what I do as a producer. I'm not an orchestrator. I don't write you the biggest string charts, blah, blah, blah. I aggregate all the ideas of, if someone brings me 3 songs that they want to make an album, that's a start. Then we have 5, then we 7, then we have 10. Maybe I find them another songwriter they can write with a really well-known songwriter. A lot of really great, well-known songwriters are friends of mine, and they've done that for me. Where they go, let me write with your fledgling songwriter or artist.
All right, sure, great.
You know, and they get the opportunity to have something placed on a record as well. And then I get players, and then I get studio, and then I'm really concerned about how things sound. And I discuss with an artist what they're looking for. I always ask an artist, what is your destination with this project? Where are you going with this? Are you just going to make something and go, whoopee, it's made, you know, it's on CD baby, you know, and people do that, and it's great, you know, but I always say, what's your destination? Can I help you make that go to another place that we can possibly elevate your career?
Right.
If you're just starting out, that's going to be really difficult. But if you're in a career already, then there are ways that we can elevate your career a little bit and maybe help you get to an agent that will get you out on the road where you can be playing in front of people. You can sell it as your gigs, or you can become someone and increase your personality quotient or whatever, you know.
Well, that's a lot of why I started getting more into the internet marketing thing in the last few years, because I've had to run my own label. And I looked around at what people were charging for internet marketing, and I was like, I'm never going to be able to afford that, you know, $5,000 a month or whatever these big people are doing. So I'm going to have to learn it. And as a jazz guy, you're always kind of thinking in terms of, I don't have any money to make the record in the first place. You know, I have all these great tunes. I have to have a plan. And I like that you've always got a strategy and a plan for what you're going to do. And once again, man, what a blast to just get a chance to see you. And, you know, we'll get together in person after all the mess blows over. And totally an honor and a treat, Tony. And thanks again for coming on the show, my friend.
Hey, Rob, I really appreciate you asking me to come on the show and talk. And it is great to sit and talk with you and chat and shoot the you know what, and I at the same time, you're a brilliant musician, and I really miss playing with you. I know the stuff that we've done in the studio and a little bit of live that we got to do with the Carmen thing, that's on fire, man. I miss that. You know, I don't know, I shouldn't say more than anything, but yeah, I miss it so much. My soul really needs to play like that with people like you and everything. Thanks for asking me on. I really appreciate it. Good luck with all this, my friend.
You got it, Tony. Have a great time on your first flight on Monday.
Yeah.